Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our two-part series for Radical Hope. And if even if you haven't read the book, this is going to be an exciting series for you to attend. We're so happy that you're here. My name is Jennifer Kem. I am the Program and Development Director or Coordinator at Cancer Bridges. And I am grateful that you're here. And we have Deborah Nosek here with us tonight. Wendy will be joining us. Wendy Myers will be joining us probably in about a half an hour. She is helping out another support group. So to introduce you to the book, first of all, uh, we have two books to give away. So we'll give away one tonight, and maybe Mia can help me with that. For everybody that shows up, we'll put everybody's name in the hat and draw one. So if you haven't read it, hopefully you'll win one, and if you don't, maybe you'll pick it up. Just to talk a little bit about there's this book is amazing, and it's based on the research from Kelly Turner, Dr. Kelly Turner, and she noticed that she was seeing people that were sort of extreme stories that were far outreaching what their doctors predicted or doing incredibly well, primarily in cancer that but has also expanded into other health challenges. And so we're going to talk about that tonight and what helps people, what brings up your quality of life with a cancer diagnosis. Deborah has been trained by Dr. Kelly Turner and is very knowledgeable, has been doing this for probably 5 years or more, right? And so we're gonna learn primarily about the book tonight and the 10 healing factors. And then next week we will hear from people in Pittsburgh who have just amazing stories. So they'll share their stories and we'll have the opportunity to ask questions. Deborah will also kind of walk through some of their stories with them to sort of highlight what factors impacted them. And so it's going to be fantastic. We're going to learn a lot, and there's a lot of opportunity to ask questions. I am recording, so I would like to everyone to mute themselves if possible. And then if you do have questions, Deborah's going to speak, and then we'll turn off the recording, and then you can ask questions. If you would like to put questions in the chat, feel free to do that while Deborah's talking, and then I might be able to help her address those while she's speaking, or we can address them afterwards because I know sometimes I forget, and it's nice to put them in the chat. But this book is exciting. It's not about finding a cure, but finding a way forward. It's about embracing hope, resilience, and the small, powerful changes that can improve our quality of life. We know that a cancer diagnosis can shake the very foundation of who you are, but Radical Hope offers a path, a framework of 10 elements that empower us to reclaim our strength and make intentional choices and cultivate our well-being in ways that truly matter. Tonight, we are honored to have trained coach from Radical Hope here with us to guide us through these 10 elements. Uh, uh, Deborah's insight and expertise will help us to understand these principles and how they can fit into our own journeys. Oh, someone said they can't.
Somebody can't hear well.
Oh, is that universal or is that just maybe I don't know if you can turn up your volume, Al? Uh, this is a space for learning, connection, and encouragement. We invite you to take what resonates, to ask questions, and most importantly, to know that you are not alone in this. Thank you for being here, for showing up for yourselves and for each other. So I'd now like to introduce Deborah Nosek. Deborah is a firm believer in the concept, believe the diagnosis, not the prognosis. She was diagnosed in 1992 with stage 1 breast cancer at the age of 38. After 7 years of no signs of cancer, in 1999, she developed an unrelenting cough, which turned out to be inoperable stage 4 breast cancer in the right lung. Rather than focusing on the grim prognostic statistics, she began discovering there were patients who were exceptional and beat the odds. This led her to her own journey towards health and healing. And in 2014, Dr. Kelly Turner's book, Radical Remission, was published. published. Deborah read it and realized that her intuition had led her to the same healing factors that Dr. Turner found in her research. Deborah later became a teacher and a coach of radical remission, is also continuing to practice work as a licensed clinical social worker. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to you. I'm going to unpin myself, and there we go.
Okay, so can everybody hear me and see me okay? Okay, just out of curiosity, I want to start with a question for you guys. I had the pleasure of meeting with your organization 5 years ago. Wendy and Jen had me come and speak. Was anybody there then by any chance? Oh, Anne? You were there then. Okay, well, thank you. Welcome again, Anne. I hope I'm not too boring for you because it's my same spiel, but 5 years later. And I'm a big time cancer survivor, and I'll go into more detail about that. So for me to be back here again 5 years later is, a real testament to a whole lot of things. And it's a real honor to be back. I live right here in Albany, New York, and I had my fingers crossed all day today that we weren't going to have freezing rain and lose power, because I wouldn't be with you right now. But it was just rain. It wasn't freezing rain. So I have the great good fortune of being able to be here with all of you tonight. And when I say I'm glad to be here, every time I speak with anybody, I really am glad to be here in ways that most people that say they're glad to be here, it doesn't have the same depth to it. As any of you that may have had or have a life-threatening diagnosis, the gratitude and the appreciation of being here to be able to experience this moment together is one of great gratitude. Again, from the depth of my heart, I'm really glad to be able to be here with all of you and share. I'm going to be sharing with you some, just a really quick version of my own story, and then I'm going to give you the highlights of what radical remission and radical hope is all about. And then, as Jen said at the end, we will open up if anybody has any comments or questions. We're free to do that together too. So in terms of my own journey with cancer, it really started a long time ago. Lots of cancer in my family history, multi-generational. And my own mother had breast cancer at a very young age. She was in her 30s. I was 12. So that was my first experience with cancer in the family. And since it was my mother, it really hit the family really hard. And I almost started to expect that someday I was going to get cancer. And I became very vigilant about it. It didn't stop me from living, but it weighed very heavily on my mind, even at a very, very young age, to the point when I was age 30, I asked my doctor for just a baseline mammogram. Now, how many people age 30 are asking for baseline mammograms? Not very many. And I was fine. And then I actually had another mammogram just before I got pregnant with my son, just to make sure everything was okay. And I was fine. And then I had my son, and I had him when I was 35 going on 36, which was in 1992. And when I finished breastfeeding him, I said to my doctor, I don't know, I just think I should have another mammogram. And we're talking about weeks after finishing breastfeeding, had the mammogram, and I did have a breast cancer in my 30s. It was a stage 1. My prognosis was excellent. I did all the conventional lumpectomy, and I did the radiation and chemotherapy treatment. And then I was fine. I had 7 years with my little boy growing up, and doing my work and being in the world, and everything fine. And then all of a sudden, in the spring of 1999, I developed this persistent, unrelenting cough, and it would not go away. So, of course, I called my doctor. He didn't think much of it. He thought maybe it was kind of a bronchial thing, and gave me an antibiotic and didn't work. So then he said, just to be on the safe side, we're going to do a chest x-ray. And sure enough, that cough really meant something. My whole right lung was filled with inoperable breast cancer tumors. And that really started me on a humongous cancer journey, as you can imagine. It was a shock because I was so well in every other way. Total shock. And we all go through different, levels of different emotional responses. Mine definitely started out as shock. And then after the shock started to wear off, a lot of, anger, depression, all those kinds of things kind of hit in. But then I started to hear about other people, either in my own community or things I've been reading about or hearing about, where there were people who actually were doing very well with their very serious cancers. And every once in a while, I heard about somebody who had completely reversed their cancer. And then I got to a point where I started wondering, if they could do that, who knows? I was open to the possibility that maybe I could do that too. And there began my journey to get well and be well and stay well. And I even remember back then, it was a blessing and a curse at the same time that there was no internet in '99. The blessing was there was so much information that if I had known, it would have scared the out of me. But on the other hand, it was an innocent time. I knew I had a serious illness, but it didn't hit me how serious it really was because of lack of internet. So I decided that I was going to believe the diagnosis, but not the prognosis. And actually, I think I read that somewhere. I don't remember where. It's not my quote, but that's what I decided to do. And if I wasn't going to believe the prognosis, once I went for my second opinion at Sloan Kettering and found out how serious it was, my prognosis was about as bad as it could get. I was given months to a few years to live, according to the prognosis. And I decided, nope, I'm going to see what I can do to be well. And then I became kind of like a sponge or magnet for anything and everything out there that talked about miracles or wellness or healing. I just pulled it all in. I was reading constantly about, Dr. Andrew Weil, who was my favorite integrative doctor way back in the day. He's been around a long time now. He had written a book called Spontaneous Healing, which talks exactly about what I'm talking about now, which was people who had been able to get well no matter how serious their cancer or disease was. And then I also decided to combine both conventional treatment. Remember, Jen said, be very, very aware. We are not against anybody who's into radical remission is not against conventional treatment. I did kind of both. I did conventional treatment for many years. And I also did a lot of the other healing factors that we're going to talk about tonight. And I did them on my own because there was no roadmap at that point in time. So it took me a few years to get into the well zone. And I would say maybe 3 to 4 years it took me from having this persistent cough to being completely symptom-free. My tumor markers went into the normal zone. All my tests looked beautiful. And it took a while. And then Somehow, for whatever reasons, I have been well ever since. So now that's going on almost 25 years. This spring will make 25 years. So, I started out in my 40s and I'll be 70 soon. Um, it just amazes me, how time just flew by. And then what happened is that there's this woman who we're going to talk about tonight called Dr. Kelly Turner, who's a researcher. And she had written the book. First book was Radical Remission, and that came out in 2014. And that book just kind of fell into my lap once at a bookstore. And I read it, I just inhaled it. And I was thinking, oh my goodness, all the different things that she talks about in the book. The 10 factors, which I'm going to describe to you tonight, my intuition told me to do on my own. And it was so validating to know that whatever it was I was doing, somebody else who did actual research on it was able to show that there might be something to the weird things that I've been doing all these years. And some of them are going to seem kind of weird, but whatever works. So she taught a class, a workshop, a 3-day workshop at, I don't know if anybody's heard of Omega Institute in Rhinebeck, New York. Again, if you're from New York, you might know better than from being from Pennsylvania. But anyway, it's this wellness place, and they do all kinds of workshops. And she was doing a workshop on radical remission, and I went. And she was a very busy woman at that point in time. She's speaking all over the world, and she wanted to start to have other people be trained, so that she would have other people sharing this information around the world, not just her. So she offered classes and certification in her work. And I was not a young woman at the time, but I decided, you know what? It's really important that I pay my wellness, that I pay it forward. So I did decide to, it was like going back to college. I had to, take all these courses and pass all these tests. And I got certified in radical remission. And then I later went on to become a radical remission coach also. So that's my background, a very thumbnail of my history with cancer. And now I'm going to give you the background of radical remission itself and how it came about. Kelly Turner was a graduate student working at a cancer facility doing counseling. And she started hearing about, every once in a while, she'd hear about people who had what they would call beat the odds with cancer. And she started researching and finding that there was very little to no research on these people, about these people. And she needed to come up with a really good dissertation topic, and she decided to make that her dissertation topic. She went around, she actually spent years interviewing people, doing what we call qualitative research, asking them a simple question. People like me, who reverse their cancers, why do you think you healed? And then she just listened. She just asked that one question and listened. And what she found is that by interviewing, I think she interviewed like 1,000 people, 1,500 people, many, many people. And she found that there were certain factors that were in common. And then she used those factors to write, that was her dissertation. And then she used that dissertation, smart cookie that she was, to write a New York Times bestseller book based on her qualitative research. And what I want to tell you is I'm going to explain the 10 factors to you tonight. But as Jen was just saying, I'm going to give you a couple of disclaimers. One is that these factors are factors, they're hypotheses based on what all these survivors explained to her, described to her, which is what qualitative research is all about. And so they are not a cure for cancer. I wish I could tell you that if you just started doing all 10 factors, it's a cure, but I'm afraid we can't say that. What we can say, though, based on real quantitative research, is that these kind of factors do improve people's immune systems, and that there's a very strong correlation between the immune system and cancers and autoimmune diseases. Because when we have a lot of inflammation in our bodies, it increases the odds of getting cancers and autoimmune conditions and a lot of other kinds of diseases. So these kind of factors that I'm going to describe to you tonight, we do know that they improve your immune system, because they can tell by blood work that they help. We can tell by, electrocardial stuff that they can do, your heart rates and everything. All these different factors can be helpful for that. And also, the other disclaimer to make really clear is if you read the book or books, there's a lot of people in the books who did not use any conventional medicine. So I don't want you to think that because there were people in the books that didn't use conventional medicine, that the radical remission program or project is against conventional medicine. That is not the case at all. So I just want to make that absolutely clear. So let me first describe what the three different kinds of radical remissions are that are described in the book. One is people who have cancer that goes away without any conventional medicine. So that's one type. Another type is where they attempt to use conventional medicine. It doesn't remit, the cancer doesn't remit, and the patient switches to alternative methods of healing, and then they do go into remission. And then the third category of a radical remission is people like me who use conventional medicine along with alternative methods, and somehow outlive a statistically dire diagnosis. And a statistically dire diagnosis is any cancer with a less than 25% chance of living after 5 years. And so the first book was Radical Remission. These two books have a very similar format to them. Radical Remission, what she did in the book is she would take each of the factors, explain the research based on what radical remission survivors expressed to her. Then she would have an actual survivor give their story in the book. And then in addition to that, she would give like all these different to-dos that you could do if you wanted to consider what things that you could do in order to kind of start doing whatever that factor is. And then what she did is years later in 2020, the book that Jen held up, Radical Hope, was published in 2020. And what she did is she continued to do research. So she updated the research from 2014. And then she also added a 10th factor to Radical Hope. And what I wanted to do too is just kind of tell you a little bit, we all use the word hope a lot. How many times a day in our own personal conversations do we use the word, I hope this? And we use the word hope all the time. But I want to just kind of give a little background on, what is hope? And I heard this explanation about being open to possibility, no matter how dire a situation appears, to be open to possibility. So in order to be open to possibility, you really don't have to be a pessimist and you don't have to be an optimist. You're just open to possibility, which is exactly what I was sharing with you a few minutes ago. Is at some point I got to the point where I realized, oh, other people are getting well. Maybe it's possible that I could do that too. And hope is also considered to be an emotion and a way of thinking that involves anticipating a positive outcome, even if it's not guaranteed. So what's important about this word called hope? What's important about it is that when we have it, it can be a very powerful motivator for us. And it can help us and empower us to persevere even through the most difficult times. And it also contributes to our sense of well-being, our resilience, and our ability to cope with any kind of adversity. And then it also encourages us to take action towards our goals and to foster positive emotions such as courage and confidence. So hope, I'm really, really pleased that she did write that second book, because I think it really was hope that kicked in there for me personally, that made a huge, huge difference in the whole way that, my life went thereafter, after the diagnosis. Okay, so now I am going to give you like a highlight of what each of the 10 different healing factors are. And with each factor, I'll just mention, some aspect of my own journey. I'll plug in with each factor, something that I intuitively just kind of did on my own. So the added on healing factor in the Radical Hope book is exercise and movement. And she didn't include exercise and movement in Radical Remission because she when she would be interviewing people for the first book, their stories were such that when they were very, very ill, they didn't exercise or move very much. However, she did notice that they kept talking about once they started feeling better and getting better, they did include movement and exercise into their lives. And she wanted to make sure that in the new book, Radical Hope, that she included that one because it's such a crucial one. So the thing about exercise and movement is that it benefits all people, all of us, regardless of any diagnosis that we might have, or even if we have a diagnosis. It's just a healthy way to live. And us as human beings, we were hunters and gatherers when we were first on the earth, and we were in constant motion. That's just the way life was back then. And look at our lives now. How much of any day are we moving anywhere? We're very sedentary in our lives today. And I don't want to scare anybody, but I just read somewhere a while back that sitting, which is what I spend most of my time doing every day, is considered to be the new smoking. So it's really important to figure out ways to incorporate movement and exercise. And I like how she uses both exercise and movement, because it's not like, when you picture somebody like, really putting out a whole lot of energy to exercise, it doesn't have to be that kind of exercise to have movement in your life. And sometimes, even if we're very ill and we're bedridden, it's a good idea to just image in our own minds doing some form of movement, because the mind, and I'll talk more about how the mind and the body are so interconnected. So they have found with all kinds of research that movement and exercise does seem to help reduce side effects for people who are in active treatment. And there are some theories that it may help reduce recurrence risks. And there's all kinds of studies about how it increases longevity. And then there's a quote from the book that says, the best movement for you to do, the best movement for you is the one that you'll do. So you want to pick something that the odds are going to be good, that it's something you're going to stick with. I remember Andrew Weil talking way back in the day that walking, for instance, is one of the best forms of exercise that can carry someone through their whole lifetime. So, and then if it's the one that you're going to do, you probably want to pick something that you enjoy rather than you hate, because if you hate it, guess what? You're not going to do it. So I remember way back in terms of my own journey with cancer and with exercise and movement, here, when I was first diagnosed, I had this perpetual cough that wouldn't go away. And I had friends that were going to be joining a yoga class just through our little town, the adult ed yoga class in the local middle school gym. And I thought, I would really enjoy doing a yoga class. And then I think, oh no, I can't do yoga. I'm coughing all the time. But then I decided, you know what? I'm going to push myself to do it anyway. And I remember when I first started the class, it was so hard to contain my coughing, but I got through it. And then I ended up doing the yoga for about 3-4 years. And it was every Monday night, I remember. And one of the really fascinating things, one of the ways I knew I was getting better, it wasn't because of the yoga, but I noticed while I was doing yoga that my cough seemed to be less and less and less over. And how good, oh my God, how good finally when the cough went away, how incredible it felt to be able to do yoga and be able to take the deep breaths into my lungs and feel that freedom of breath and not feel the irritation that I was feeling, for years. So I did yoga, and for years I did Zumba. I don't know if anybody here has ever done Zumba before, but oh my God, I did that until COVID. I haven't gone back to Zumba yet. But I did Zumba for years. And the reason I love that was because I love moving to music. And music can be so fun and uplifting. And also the camaraderie with other people was so wonderful. So again, if you're going to decide to do exercise and movement in your life, pick something that you enjoy, because then you'll be much more possible that you're going to do it on a long-term basis. Number 2 factor is deepening your spiritual connection. And spiritual connection is a very delicate topic or subject, because the word spiritual means so many different things to everyone. For some people, it means God. For some people, soul, chi. There are people who are agnostic and atheist that still have a belief in a deep, peaceful energy. But one of the factors that radical remission survivors talked about is that spiritual connection that does give that warm, peaceful energy, kind of like a blanket of deep peace and unconditional love, just kind of pouring over oneself. And then again, each of us is very unique in terms of what kind of life experiences you might choose to elicit that kind of experience. For some people, it might be prayer, meditation, chanting. People who can have a spiritual experience running in nature. And then again, all of these different factors, it's making them regular practices in your life. And then things like meditation also help to just calm and quiet the mind, and that rest and relaxation response kicks in from that too. So I've been a big meditator myself. Actually, since I was a teenager, I went, I don't know how many people remember in the 1970s, transcendental meditation. Okay. I got my mantra when I was like 16 years old. I still have it today, but I've taken up a lot of different forms. There's 50 million different types of meditation. And again, whatever practice you might choose to do, it's what fits for you. And especially during this cancer journey, I've really done my best to make, for me, my spiritual practice is a form of meditation, and do it on a really, really regular basis. Third factor is empowering yourself. Now, empowering yourself is the title for the healing factor that Kelly Turner gives to the Radical Hope book. In the Radical Remission book, the difference between the two books is she has, instead of empowering yourself, it was something about having control in your life in the Radical Remission book. And then she decided to shift it to empowering yourself, because she started to get that when we think about the word control, it can work for us and against us at the same time. Because every time we put a lot of pressure on ourselves to control something, we actually, hi, Wendy, we actually, when we're trying to control something, we actually add more stress into our lives. So she reframed the same concept is learning to empower yourself. And the word patient itself comes from the Latin word pati, P-A-T-I, which means actually to suffer, to allow, and to submit. I hate being a patient. And there are, doctors find and medical people find that there are the good, compliant patients. And a lot of the radical remission patients are the annoying ones. And we're annoying because we ask tons of questions, don't want the doctor or the medical practitioner to walk out the door until all of our questions are answered, do our own research. Sometimes we want to get second, third, fourth, and fifth opinions before we make a decision. So we're the annoying patient, because we want to be the CEO of our own health care and making our own decisions regarding our own lives. And then when we are empowered that way, we become very active versus passive. And we have that willingness to make changes in our lives. Look at how many people, when they're diagnosed, they're working 60 or more hours a week at their jobs and having huge amounts of stress from something like that. I'm just giving that as an example from that alone. And realizing if I want to get better, I probably need to make some changes in my life where I'm not going to be feeling so stressed. And that's just one example of the kinds of changes that we might need to really seriously consider in order to get well and stay well. Then when we make whatever decisions we're going to make, not everybody's going to agree with our decisions. So when we're empowering ourselves, we also have to realize that that's what's going to happen. Not everybody's going to agree with what I'm doing or what I'm not doing. And that I need to develop the skills that I need to have in order to deal with other people's resistance to where I'm at. And when I was empowering myself at the very beginning of my diagnosis, I worked really hard to find my best A-team of medical practitioners, people that I could really trust, respect, were really good at listening to me and seriously considering what I thought was important and not just dismissing me. I know a lot of us have had all different kinds of experiences with medical practitioners, and it was really important to me to have my A-team. And I still have some of the same A-team today. The doctor who I had that helped me navigate through getting well, she retired many, many years ago, but she left me in the hands of some really good people. So, but she and I were like really tight. I mean, she was like an angel in a human body for me. The next one, the fourth factor, is increasing positive emotions. There's a quote from Eleanor Roosevelt that I really like a lot, that happiness is not a goal, it is a byproduct. Many, many times we tell ourselves, well, once I have that much money, I'll be happy. Or once I lose that much weight, then I'll be happy. Or once my spouse changes in such and such a way, then I'll be happy. So it's always in the future, then I'll be happy. Or once I'm feeling better, then I'll be happy. Well, what I realized was, according to Eleanor Roosevelt, it's the journey, it's being in the moment that is what counts the most. And that having pleasurable, happy experiences is like a muscle, that you want to exercise on a really regular basis too. And sometimes, no matter how horrible life is at any moment in time, to find 5 minutes out of a given day, just 5 minutes, where you can just laugh or do something pleasurable, can make a huge difference. Just to even have five minutes. And when we have those 5 minutes of something happy or pleasurable or positive in our lives, there is actually a biological response in the body to having that moment. And there's great healing hormones such as oxytocin and serotonin and dopamine and not epinephrine, but one of the one of those that gets released in the body. And those particular hormones are very healing in our bodies. So it's almost like giving ourselves medicine in a way to give ourselves permission to have fun. Laughter is one of the best ways to get those kinds of hormones going in your body. There is even a thing, I know some of my colleagues in Radical Remission got trained in something called laughter yoga, where they combine those two things together. I don't know if any of you guys have experienced that, but I went to a workshop on it once and it was hysterical. It was so much fun. And there's so many things out there. Again, we all have our own unique senses of what gives us pleasure, but it's so important to give yourself permission to experience those things almost on a daily basis. Another thing that is a real oxytocin releaser is a hug. And now that I was going to say, now that we don't have to worry about viruses so much anymore, which is not the case right now here, but hugging, 10 seconds of a hug releases those hormones. And then something that I am very aware of from being a therapist is the mind-body connection, where the mind and the body are so interconnected that whatever is affecting the mind affects the body, and whatever affects the body affects the mind. And sometimes you don't know which comes first, the chicken or the egg. And I would like to give you the one person that's here. I can't remember who you are, who was here 5 years ago. I probably did this with everybody then, so bear with me on it. But I'd like to give you a little mind-body experience right now, if that's okay with everyone. If anybody in our little group right now has any issues with lemons, do not listen to the next few minutes. If either you were traumatized by lemons or you hate lemons and it's real negative, don't listen to this experience. But if you're fine with, Maureen, you're not are you okay with the lemons, Maureen?
I'm not sure what lemons are.
Oh, no, not linens, lemons.
Oh, lemons.
Lemons.
Okay.
I'm glad you asked, because we're not dealing with linens, we're doing lemons.
Okay.
Okay. I'm so glad you put your hand up. Good. Lemons. Okay. So what I want everybody to do, since nobody's been traumatized by lemons, thank you, Jen. I thought I was the one that had a hard time. But anyway, I want everybody to just kind of sit back in your chair, close your eyes. I know you're in Pittsburgh, so you probably have similar weather to what we have here in Albany, which we're in the throes of winter right now. But I want you to just imagine yourself when it's the hottest part of summer. It's really, really hot, and you're outside enjoying yourself, and it's so hot. You're either doing gardening or just hanging out or by the pool or just enjoying the heat of the day, but you're starting to get really hungry. So you go into your house and you decide you're going to have a nice, tall, cold glass of iced tea. But you realize, I really want to put some lemon into my drink. So you go to the refrigerator and lo and behold, yes, there is a lemon in the refrigerator. So you go get a sharp knife and a cutting board and you start slicing into your lemon and it's spurting juice all over the place. And you decide you're going to take a taste of your lemon before you put it in your drink. So you slice it off and you put it in your mouth. And I want everybody to open their eyes. And I don't know about you guys, but most people start having a physiological reaction to the thought of having a lemon to suck on. Some people salivate, other people pucker up. I saw a lot of puckering, by the way. I had my eyes open. I saw a lot of puckering. So were we really sucking on lemons? No, we weren't sucking on lemons. But our bodies thought we were because we were thinking about it. So our thoughts are very powerful. And to be able to harness our thoughts for our healing and our wellness, and then I'm going to talk about releasing suppressed emotions in a minute, and then releasing the negative, helps our body heal. Again, it gets those healing hormones going, and it kind of sedates the cortisol that gets released when we're under a lot of stress. So, again, everybody's different. And I know I say that with every factor, but the important thing is to find things that you find uplifting. So it could be gardening or singing or dancing or cooking or doing volunteer work, doing something to help others. It could be you have a dear friend that makes you feel good and you really enjoy talking to your friend. Could be watching funny movies or cartoons, reading a good book, that's really, inspiring. Whatever it is that, again, increases your positive emotions, it's going to help. Then the fifth factor is following your intuition. And there's a quote from Sigmund Freud. He said way back in the day, in vital matters, the decision should come from the unconscious, because you know how he was into the unconscious, the ego, and the id, the unconscious, from somewhere within ourselves. So that was his explanation of where our intuition comes from. In the book Radical Remission, Kelly Turner talks about how the survivors really relied on following their intuition. Some people call our intuition our sixth sense. And then also, you've probably heard of having a gut reaction to things that we experience. And that gut reaction is actually a physiological response in our gut, because 100 million neurons that we have in our brain, we also have 100 million neurons in our guts. Same kind of neuron. So there's kind of a communication that's going on between our gut and our head with all these neurons between the two. And being able to tune in to what our intuition is telling us. Remember at the beginning, I said I had this intuitive sense that I needed to do a lot more than conventional medicine in order to get and stay well. That was my intuition screaming at me, telling me, you really need to do something. And so my intuition actually took me, because there was no radical remission at the time, it took me step by step, kind of incorporating everything I'm telling you about right now over a very prolonged period of time. Then the sixth factor is releasing suppressed emotions. And I love this quote from Mark Twain, which is that anger is an acid that can do more harm to the vessel in which it is stored than onto anything in which it is poured. So what Mark Twain was telling us is that when we have those kinds of feelings and it's contained in us, and stuck in us, it does harm to us. If I'm really angry with another person in my life, I'm not harming them with my anger. I'm harming me with containing the anger. At the same time, it's important to realize that any emotion, no matter how deep it is an important thing to experience and allow yourself to experience and honor those feelings. But again, getting back to Mark Twain, is if it's a negative emotion, we don't want to keep holding it and containing it. We want to find ways to release them. And there's a lot of different kinds of ways to release negative emotions. Kelly Turner talks about, if you think about, like a waterfall, just kind of like streaming over you and just releasing whatever that negative feeling. I know, when I take a shower, it's not a waterfall, but I find it very releasing just to take a really nice hot shower. When I was first diagnosed, and I'm a therapist, that was one of the first things that occurred to me, was I really needed to get some therapy for myself, because the diagnosis of cancer is so traumatic. I didn't want to be the holder of that trauma, because I wanted all that energy that goes into holding that trauma. I wanted to release it so I had the energy to put towards getting well and whatever it would take to get well. So I did go for my own therapy. That was one of the first things that my intuition told me to go and do. And I had an excellent therapist who did specialize in treating trauma. And whatever we did together, it really helped. I think I was able to kind of unload the trauma of the situation that I was in and get into a very different emotional space with it. I think I went from the trauma to like an acceptance. This is what's happening. I have this diagnosis. And rather than beating myself up, like what have I done wrong? Did I deserve this? All the things that we typically think about when we get a cancer diagnosis. I was able to get rid of all that crap and just realize I have a diagnosis of cancer, and there's lots of things I can do about it. So I want to put my focus on that instead of on all that negative stuff. But I realized I was going to need help to do that. And I was very fortunate in being able to get really good help. Next, the seventh factor. And by the way, I don't know if I shared with it, there is no order of importance to any of these, by the way. Everybody goes through them in their own way, in their own time. And if I forgot to tell you that, I apologize. That's very important. It's not like everybody has to do all 10 factors and do them in a particular order. It's just that I happen to put this order up, for tonight. So then the next one, which is a really hard one, is radically changing our diet. It's so hard to change how we eat, especially in our world today. The standard American diet can be toxic, but it's just it's how we've been cultured. In our culture, it's the way we eat. Even Hippocrates, who was the father of medicine, said that we should let food be thy medicine and medicine be thy food. And that I started to come to terms with that myself, that I really needed to make some radical changes in the way that I was eating. Radically changing our diet is something that it really does help to not just make all these decisions all by yourself, because how we eat, especially with all the different plans that are out there to eat, for some people, one thing could be phenomenal. And for another person, that same way of eating could be horrible. So sometimes we really need to have somebody help us figure out what's best for us. When Kelly Turner did her research, the radical remission survivors did say this: this is generally speaking, they all said that they made a real effort to either minimize or eliminate eating meat, wheat, sweets, and dairy. And that they wanted to boost up substantially eating vegetables and fruit, and that anything that they were going to ingest, to get it as clean and as organic as possible. And also in terms of drinking water, to drink clean water, filtered water if possible. And that she talks in the book too about something called the microbiome. I don't know how many people have heard that that's made the news a lot lately. How our gut is a microbiome, and how it's such a huge, important part of our immune system, that almost everything starts and ends in the gut. And you may have heard about the leaky gut syndrome that many of us have had. And that, if we have leaky gut from the way we eat, it can lead to a lot of autoimmune conditions, and also it creates tremendous inflammation in the body. So eating, again, is one of those ways that we can influence our health. It's all very individual again. In terms of my own journey, I have the good fortune, how you have your organization in Pittsburgh, which is so wonderful. I had have still a similar organization here in Albany. And we didn't have Zoom back then, but we would get together and have all these speakers and forums. And there was one oncological nurse who had gone for specialization in integrative medicine, who was speaking at one of our organization's meetings. And I really liked her a lot. And she was available for consultation. So I hired her for consultation for both changing my diet and then the next thing I'm going to tell you about in a minute. So I was able to find somebody who could help me from a professional way to navigate what I was eating. And also, when I tell you in a minute about taking herbs and supplements, she helped me with that too. The two things that she most highly recommended to me, because I basically was eating fairly healthy, but I upped the ante a lot with that. But I really stopped eating refined sugar and processed foods. I actually, while I knew that I had active tumors, I was like really diligent about not eating anything with refined sugar in it. And there were no more birthday cakes for me. That was the end of birthday cakes. And I used to love having a birthday cake every year, but that was one of the things I kind of gave up in order to radically change my diet. And then kind of same thing I was talking about with radically changing your diet. The other factor that that's important to have professional input on is taking herbs in supplements, because anything you're going to ingest, even if it's so-called natural and whatever, it may not necessarily be a good thing for you. So you really do need to have some professional or expert advice about what things, and also to find out what your body needs, because everybody's body, again, is different. And a lot of the radical remission survivors that Kelly Turner interviewed did say that in order to get rid of the cancer, they believed that they had to kind of change their body's environment. Almost like when you think about your basement downstairs, Pittsburgh people have basements, right? In other parts of the country, there's no basements. I know if you go to Florida, there's no basements. But anyway, you can get mold in your basement, and you can get rid of the mold in your basement. You can clean it away. But if you don't change the environment, in terms of how much humidity is in the air, and things like that, it's going to come back again. So, to radical remission survivors interviewed, it was important to change their body's environment so that it would be less of a host for cancer cells. And again, it's a very individual thing, and there are no magic bullets when it comes to herbs and supplements. It's just, again, doing what you can to get your body as well and healthy as you can. And there's a lot of testing that these professionals like herbalists, nutritionists, naturopaths, functional medical doctors, integrative doctors, they can all run tests to see what your particular body needs. And when you get the right herbs and supplements, they can help to do several different things. We're exposed to many toxins in our day-to-day lives, and there are supplements and herbs that can actually help to detoxify your body from some of those toxins. Herbs and supplements can help boost the immune system, and they can also help heal and correct any digestive issues that we may have. And then, the nurse that I was telling you about that helped me, as an example with herbs and supplements, she tested my blood for my vitamin D3 levels, and I was way deficient with vitamin D3. I was about as low as it can get. And again, I don't know, you'd have to check to see if there's any, I'm sure there's studies on it, but apparently a lot of cancer patients are very deficient in vitamin D. And vitamin D is a very easy thing to correct. You can take a vitamin D3 supplement and they can monitor you on it to make sure that you don't go too high with vitamin D levels. So that was one of the things she recommended to me. So way back in the day, I did start really supplementing heavily with vitamin D3. And then through the years, I kept, adding other things that I found along the way that help keep me fairly healthy and well. Then we're up to number 9. The 9th factor is having strong reasons for living. And I don't know if any of you know who Joseph Campbell and his famous phrase is, follow your bliss. Well, he had another quote too, which is that I don't believe people are looking for the meaning of life as much as they're looking for the experience of being alive. So it's also a very mindful kind of quote. It's being in the moment. I'm here right this minute. I'm alive, I'm breathing, I'm well, and I want to be doing something with my life that has reason, that gives me a sense of reason and purpose for being in this life right now. Kelly Turner's research showed that while radical remission survivors did not want to die, that they really, really wanted to live. So it wasn't the focus, I don't want to die, I don't want to die. It was, I want to live, I want to live, I want to live. Big shift in focus there. And, we all have, because we don't know, death is the unknown, and we all have fears of death. But they didn't focus so much on the fear of death as much as the zest for life. And oftentimes the survivors claimed that the diagnosis was a wake-up call to really reflect on what things they wanted to change in order to have whatever, I might be here today, tomorrow, I might be gone the next day. I could be here another 10, 20, well, I'm going to be 70 soon. So I don't know if I'm going to get close to 100, but it's only 100's only 30 years from now. Before 30 years seemed like so long, and now it doesn't seem so much anymore. But anyway, having a sense of meaning and purpose actually helps to turn off the fight, flight, freeze kind of sense we get when we're feeling a lot of fear. And it helps us to turn on the rest and repair response. And, when I first got my diagnosis, again, going back to my own story, I had, well, he's alive today. Actually, this elementary school kid that I'm going to tell you about right now is about to make me a grandmother in a couple months. So he was in second grade when I was diagnosed in 99. And I was in the hospital. I was in there for almost a week. They were scoping my lung, and I had a tremendous amount of fluid that they had to remove, and it was taking a long time. And I was in the hospital, and he was about to star in his class play, The Wizard of Oz. And I was determined. I was going to be out of the hospital and sitting in the audience watching him sing If I Only Had a Brain. And they discharged me from the hospital. I had my clothes on and went straight to the elementary school to see him. So that was my purpose at that moment in time. I was going to be there, come hell or high water, to see him perform that day. And then I'm very, very, very appreciative that I got to see many of his milestones. And one of the biggest milestones ever is that he and his wife are going to have a baby in April, and I'm going to be a grandmother. So I've got lots of reasons, strong reasons for living. When I really think about, my whole life, I had a lot of really strong reasons for living, and still have a lot of strong reasons for living. And again, that's one of the factors. And then the last factor is embracing social support. And we are human beings. And because we're human beings, we are hardwired to bond with others. If we didn't have this hardwiring in our DNA, we would cease to exist on the face of the earth. It's one of the things that propels us to keep going. And even, human babies are the most helpless of all the different mammals on the face of the earth. It takes a little baby a long time. Was it like a horse? A horse is up and walking minutes after birth. So it's just interesting to see the different mammals. And it's radical remission survivors say that it's actually love that helps them feel like they can heal. So it's that social support, and being embraced by others and having a sense of community that helps. And that's why things like your organization is so vital and so important, because that's one of the ways that we can have that social support. So our goal in life is to feel connected instead of alone. And one thing I noticed is that, I don't know if it's just me or many, many cancer people, that we're really good at giving of ourselves. However, it's not as easy for us to receive from others as it is for us to give to others. I don't know how many of you have had that experience too. So that was another one of my cancer journey experiences, was learning to be able to accept others' support and help. Because I needed a lot in order to do my normal living. I needed a lot of help and support. And I just learned the hard way. I got to do that. And then in the book, Radical Hope, if you have an opportunity to get and read it, Kelly and I are friends, and she incorporated just a little interview with me on page 274 under the chapter about embracing social support, because I really took a lot of advantage of the social supports here in Albany. My group, it's like your group. I started attending their meetings and their groups. And, when they would have workshops, I was like, I could be doing something almost every day with that group. And then I had the good fortune of being able to, pay back in later years. I do a support group every first Wednesday night of every month. And I've been doing it since 2007. for cancer people with my organization. And then we decided to develop a group just for people with metastatic breast. It's a breast cancer support organization. And we decided to do a group just for women with metastatic breast cancer, because the experience is just so unique to all the different cancer experiences that we thought it was important to offer that. So I've been doing that group. I don't know how many years now. So I feel like it's important for me to kind of pay it forward. So there's been some changes that have happened with the Radical Remission organization, and I wanted to kind of fill you in on some of that. There was a Harvard study. There was a woman by the name of Dr. Junadea Barnett, who actually contacted Kelly Turner. Harvard is one of her alma maters. And I don't know if they knew each other from back then, but anyway, a researcher at Harvard contacted Kelly Turner and said, would you like me to do some research on the effects of your workshop that you offer? And Kelly said, sure. So they undertook this research project that actually was published just this past November of 2024 on the impact of the multimodal intervention of radical remission on cancer patients' quality of life. And the multimodal intervention is the actual workshop that Kelly put together. And that workshop is exactly what I just gave you a very quick highlight of, but it takes each of the factors and then is an experiential experience for the people that do the workshop. And what the research found was that it really did make an impact in the quality of life. It enhanced people's health outcomes, their sense of well-being, decreased treatment side effects. And they did a longitudinal study 1 month and 6 months post going through a workshop. And it was very interesting results, kind of suggesting that individuals that participated did benefit from their experience with that. The Radical Remission Project has also started something that started very recently, like the less than 2 years. If you go to the Radical Remission website, you're going to see that there's a podcast called Stories That Heal. And there's every week they put up a new survivor being interviewed on their story, on how they think they got well and are staying well. And then every once in a while, they'll have a medical practitioner who is in oncology speak as an expert too. So that's relatively new. And then Kelly Turner herself, the author of the 2 books, she kind of passed the torch. So this is relatively new. There are 2 great people, Liz Curran and Carla Mans-Giroux, who are now the co-directors of Radical Remission. And so if you're interested in finding out more about what Radical Remission is offering, or anything you want to know, there is a Radical Remission website, just radicalremission.com. And almost everything that you could possibly want to know is on that website. So I think I covered the territory that I was going to share with you. And if you guys have any questions or comments or anything you would like to ask or share, I guess, Jen, you'll figure out how to manage that. And I would do my best to answer any questions.